Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. It's us, it's three of us. Nicola's been and he's gone. And well, where should we start? Should we start with James and the whole? What's this? What are you doing? Are you pushing this? What are you doing? What are you doing, man?
I get claustrophobic in the middle.
Oh, yeah. It's a pity I can't move. I wonder if I can move the tabs around down the bottom. No, that's a bit dull, isn't it? Let's start with James. James and EASA, the wonderful world of EASA, and the 1 million pages of documents. Now, I suppose I should say, have you? Because you are Captain Minutiae out finding nonsense in amongst tons and tons of paperwork. Have you found anything exciting yet? I think there's an awful lot of it, though, isn't there?
Well, I thought I'd found everything within all of the documentation, and I was kind of pleased with myself that I'd managed to root through all of the documents, like probably about 10 times or so, and I was like, okay, well, this is how it all works. Then I kind of realized, I put up a post, and I basically came to a conclusion that anyone trying to get into the drone industry after July the 1st was basically in a very tough position. But then one of the NQEs pointed out to me that actually there was some information which hadn't yet been published, which basically solves all of the issues that were happening. And the conclusion is that come the 1st of July, all of the EASA regulations are being warped and twisted in a way to basically try and carry on with exactly what we've got at the moment. So essentially, you've got something called the PDRA, which is a predefined risk assessment. So the PDRA is basically like an operational safety case. So imagine you go and do your 3 volumes, and then you basically look at your operation, you say, okay, these are the risks. This is how I'm going to mitigate all those risks. And then you do your risk assessment to say, I'm going to do that. Well, what the CAA have done is, in a predefined risk assessment, the CAA go away and do that process and then say, if you meet all of these criteria, then you can do this. And so what they've done is they've used that mechanism to basically allow people to apply for a PFCO through that mechanism. So as long as they have done the GVC course, which is the General Visual Line of Sight course, and they're flying an aircraft which is below 25 kilos, there's a few other bits and pieces, but that's pretty much it. Then they can fly, 30 meters on takeoff, 50 during flight. And that hasn't been published yet, but I spoke to them today from the CAA, and they said that they're going to update CAP 1789 now. So it's useful because it's all well and good them disseminating it to a few individuals, but sometimes you're not connected to those people, or you haven't watched their Facebook feed, or you haven't watched their videos, and so you're not aware of that. So it's important that kind of stuff gets published. So the CA have been really good, and they're gonna update all that information. But also you've got the GVC component, which is your PFCO. But one thing that is really good that they're bringing in is the module 1, they're calling it. So module 1 is basically extended visual line of sight. So you meet the requirements of extended visual line of sight, which is some training and some equipment requirements, and then you can fly out to 1.5 kilometers. Now, normally you would have had to have gone through an operational safety case to get that, but now you just have to meet the requirements of the predefined risk assessment from the CAA, and then you can do EV loss. So I think this is the way the industry is going, is, instead of having to do, going through all these complex safety cases for quite simple tasks, what you're going to get is these predefined risk assessments, which are going to be created by the CAA. People then just meet those requirements, and then they're going to be able to do all of these extended capabilities. So, it's very complicated. They could have made it, we've got about 1,000 pages worth of regulations, and to be honest, I could probably condense that into about 150.
Is it really a number greater than 500 pages?
Yes. Yeah, much greater than 500 pages.
Is that for all RPAS regulation in the UK? Or
yes.
Is that everything, or is that it's everything? So
everything.
Private, commercial, everything.
Yeah. So you used to have probably somewhere between 100 and 150 pages, and we're now up to probably just over 1,000. But that doesn't, you know, I think some of that regulation is quite good though, because some of it defines more complex stuff like beyond visual line of sight stuff. So you know, swings and roundabouts. They've made the simple stuff hard, and they've made the harder stuff more simple. So depending on what you want to do, you know, it could be good or bad.
So just if it's possible, that extended VLOS, that 1.5 kilometers, that makes quite a useful area of your student, the middle of it, 3 kilometers across. How does that relate to towns, villages, all that sort of a thing? Where could one actually do that?
So you, by the looks of it, you can do that within the extents of the PDRA module 1, and I don't think there's too many restrictions on that. I think you can do it in congested areas, from what I remember. I'd have to have a look at it because, you know, you could read through these regulations 1,000 times and you would still forget parts of it. There is so much to it. You know, you have to go through it with a top fine tooth comb, and I'm actually doing that for someone at the moment, is trying to basically take that 1,000 pages down to about 6, which is tricky, but it's, you know, it's certainly possible. But the key point, I'd have to have a look for you to actually go and realize what it is. I'm just bringing it up now, actually. But essentially, I think you can pretty much do it anywhere. But there are some requirements set on the aircraft and things like that. So I'm having a look at it now. Where are we? So there's a training component to it. So the training component basically covers you for your extended visual line of sight flying. I'm just trying to find it. It's B6 from what I remember.
Of
B6
course.
digital GV. So it talks about theoretical and practical exam, and then it doesn't explain any more than that. So give me 5 minutes, and I'll find the answer.
No. I was just interested because that's quite a thing, isn't it? That a K&a half. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're mapping stuff, that's a lot. That is a lot. So, and the airframes that will be able to do that sort of thing, what do we need to do to have a compliant airframe?
So the key thing here actually is the CAA basically turned around and they went and said, okay, well, we don't really like the standard scenarios, so like we need to like separate standard scenarios and predefined risk assessments. And this is one thing which I was getting mixed up on. I kind of thought they were one of the same thing, but they're actually very different. So a predefined risk assessment, as I've mentioned, is where the CAA do the risk assessment, you send in the evidence to them and they say, yeah, you're good to go. Now, a standard scenario is different because they set the bar a lot higher and they say you have to have a parachute on board, you're not allowed to fly over people, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. The aircraft has to be powered by quantum physics and, you know, all the rest of it. So they basically make the thing completely unusable. But then they say all you have to do is say you have to declare to the CAA that you're going to operate under that standard scenario, and then you can just go off and do it. And so the CAA's take on this is like, one, it's not really that useful because it's like it's so specific on what you have to do, what all of the requirements you have to meet, make it not very useful at all. But secondly, the CAA don't like it because people are just going to go off and start operating, saying, yeah, I'm going to operate under the standard scenario. And the first point that the CAA realize that people are doing that is the point where they crash, and then they get a phone call to say, yeah, we've had an accident under this standard scenario. So I think the PDRA is a lot more, you know, it makes a lot more sense. It's basically just an operational safety case, but instead of you having to do it, the CAA do it for you. You know, and like a lot of the safety cases that sort of I'm doing at the moment are pretty much very similar to each other. You know, there's probably 4 common types. So reduced distance, flying near crowds, flying at high altitudes, and flying extended visual line of sight. They're very, very common sort of scenarios. And so I think eventually these will all be covered under a PDRA. And most of the operational safety case stuff will be doing stuff that's more interesting, like swarming or beyond visual line of sight and things like this. Yeah, we're seeing a shift of the hard stuff into the easy category, and then the very hard stuff into the hard category. And I think that's in the long term that will be good for the industry, because we're starting to see BB-loss applications coming through now. There's 2 companies in the UK who I'm working with who are currently going through BB-loss applications for sort of shielded BB-loss is the kind of approach I would call it. That's really interesting stuff, really pushing the industry forward. CAA have turned around and say that electronic conspicuity is going to be mandated in 2 years. Now, some people will say, oh, it's, privacy and all of this, it's going to be bad for the industry. But 1, it's going to improve safety. But 2, it's going to mean that if you're flying beyond visual line of sight, where everything is. So you can now put together a safety case, and mitigate that air risk, which you couldn't normally do. So
how can you know where everything is if not all aircraft are ADS-B or mostly?
Well, this is the thing. So the CAA in 2 years' time have stated that they are going to mandate electronic conspicuity for all aircraft. So this is coming in. It's going to happen. They haven't quite worked out how they're going to do it yet. But this was presented at the end of last year at Share the Air. I've also spoken to the CAA on multiple occasions since then, and they are pretty adamant this is going to happen. This will be coming in the next 2 years' time. And it's very, very conveniently timed for the Future Flight Challenge. So the first 2 years of the Future Flight Challenge is development phase. If you don't know what Future Flight Challenge is, it's £125 million government project, pumping money into private industry on a 50-50 matched funding. And the whole idea is to basically create the infrastructure and the technology to enable future flight in the UK. And so the first 2 years is development phase. The second 2 years is demonstration phase. And then at the end of that, the winner will basically demonstrate at Farnborough Air Show their technology. And so we're probably looking at a beyond visual line of sight flight of a drone or an air taxi in unsegregated airspace routine operation. That, I think, is the end goal for the competition.
It's just as well that Farnborough's completed its great big airspace grab, nine new sections of airspace last week.
Oh, really?
Which some might say was tied to the sale and a condition of sale of Farnborough to an American company. But I mean, far be it from me to suggest that would be the case. It's pretty shocking. If you're coming up from the West Country, going past Southampton, between Southampton and Lasham, the gliding centre is really affected by it. It's bad news, bit of a grab. I thought modern aircraft had high precision instruments that really, the amount of airspace they need for all this circuit flying, all that should be reduced in these long approaches. They should be reducing the airspace around these places, not increasing them. It's terrible. Cloud splitter. Sorry. The UK and Europe actually has got remote ID kind of coming through anyway, and a long time beforehand. And Greg's key flight radar, don't check flight radar because that's slightly time delayed and it won't show you all the tracks because you can actually pay to get yourself removed from flight radar. It's $150 and you won't show up. So those apps are good, but they're not great. And the UK is blessed with some solid on electronic conspicuity. You carry on, James. Sorry.
That's all right. So I think you will actually end up getting your wish. So you talked about no GA below 2K. I think you're not going to quite get that, I don't think. But at the last drone industry action group, I suggested no non-conspicuous GA below 1K. So it's a little bit twist on your words.
I'll tell you what. You're the EASA Appreciation Society. Well, they've come in. They've heard what I've said, and in Class D airspace below 4,000 feet, they've changed the weather minima, and general aviation in the UK is going to go, hey, what just happened? Because they weren't paying attention, and that's going to cause a lot of trouble. In the UK, the cloud base is generally around 3,000 feet. So it's going to affect, because the EASA has made it 4,000 feet. It's going to affect all manner of operations. But there is something that's going to happen, and unfortunately, I'm a pilot. James is also a pilot, and Bruce sometimes is near aeroplanes. You were a pilot as well, Bruce? I don't know.
No. You've seen me fly. Do you really think I would trust my own life to my own flying capabilities?
Yeah,
no, I'm not that stupid.
There is that. But I think general aviation is going to experience a bit of pain as well, as you say, James. I think it's coming, and they haven't seen it coming, just as most of our industry hasn't. Osbo Drone, Greg has mentioned the DJI stuff with their new video they put out of electronic conspicuity via the phone. And I was Ian said he might
don't get them mixed up, Gary. It's not electronic conspicuity.
No, true, yes.
Remote ID.
Remote ID. You're right. Yeah. Well, is it? Because it's that is a little bit more than remote ID what they rolled out, in that you can see the aircraft and operator's position.
No, that's exactly what the Americans are mandating with their remote ID. They call it remote ID. That's what the FAA wants. They want exactly that information.
But electronic conspicuity is a lot easier, actually.
It is in some ways, but it's not in others, because to be conspicuous, generally that means conspicuous to other airspace users. You're going to have to use a lot more power than the tiny little Wi-Fi that DJI is using.
True.
Yeah, it would make sense to kind of marry the two up, really, because basically it's like, okay, I want to make myself conspicuous to people on the ground, and I want to make myself conspicuous to people in the air. So really, you just want to make yourself conspicuous. Why separate the two?
I've seen all these reports. Drones are already incredibly conspicuous. You can see them from 2 miles away if you're an airline pilot. Just dress them in high-vis jackets with a clipboard and they'll be fine.
They can. That's true. They can, can't they? They can see them from the next county. So, funny enough, if you follow me on Twitter, I said I've got to increase the amount of BS I put out. I've been working on that today. Let's see.
Do not use my initials in vain.
Yeah, well, yes, there is that. How do I get that? Maybe I can't do it. Maybe I can't just. Oh, there we are. Here we are. Here's this is what I've been open cargo drone, OCD. That's what I've been working on. And I'm already. You see, you've got to put graphics into things, haven't you? And you've got to have renderings. So I'm already coming up with some ideas for that.
Can you integrate the Fortnite game engine into this? Or someone, that'd be great. Make an interactive game. They'll get the kids involved.
I was going to say, this does look like one of them kind of strategy games where you have to build yourself a town and then do drone deliveries from
some delivery. Yeah.
Well, you see, because I'm going straight for the key audience of youngsters or understand that visual straight away. I couldn't possibly do it in a way that would work for us. It would be like oil paintings or something like that.
Tapestries. Your tapestries.
Tapestries. That's right. Yeah. I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe that I've seen people talking about using APRS for have I got one here for electronic conspicuity. It just won't work. But the AMA, some of the forums have lit up with it, and people have bought little Sane Sonic. There you are. I've actually got one for other uses, but I don't know what I did with it. Put it down somewhere. Is it over there? Oh, there it is. Over there. I'll get it. This is what people are fitting to their model aircraft, and it's great. It's a great little thing. If you APRS is the ham radio way of putting where your car is, or if you're going on search and rescue or something like that on a map. And it's simple, it's easy. But people are buying these now and saying, I am remote ID compliant because I put one of these in my model airplane. You couldn't be further from the truth. And if 100 model airplanes, which I try and use APRS in the same place, one message every 20 minutes would get through. It would be rubbish. It would be absolutely rubbish. So there's so much noise kicking up about it now. And basically saying 5G. Yep, 5G, that is exactly Exactly.
But it'll fry your brain. 5G will fry your brain. I read it on Facebook. It must be true.
But
Well,
when
like
5G,
5G got a range of 20 meters or something. So you're going to need to have tethered drones in the sky to basically communicate with the other drones.
hang on a minute. Hang on. I'll just refer you. I'll refer you back to this graphic. You see, I'm ahead of you. I am ahead of you there. And what I've missed is I haven't put any Bitcoin symbols on there, and blockchain and things like that. That's what I really should be doing.
Don't diss the blockchain. Don't diss the blockchain, Gary. Have you not seen Heathrow's and Nats's future flight proposal?
I have seen it. I have, and I know it's in there.
I don't know. If you think about it, how many UTMs are there out there? Give me a number, Gary.
Oh, I know the number went from 6 at the first show where they went to 70.
So you've got 70 UTM companies who are all going to be providing deconfliction services. So you've got 2 aircraft in a collision. One of them is going to be controlled by one UTM company. One of them is going to be providing deconfliction from another. They need to share data. Well, all 70 of these companies need to share data. They all need to be in consensus with each other as to what the reality of the data is. It's a consensus problem. What does blockchain do? It solves the consensus problem. So
what could possibly go
actually,
wrong
as a technology, it's pretty much bang on the mark. But Bitcoin, let's get away from that because that's got all sorts of negative traits about it. mainly thanks to the media. But I'm
after VC funding, so I've got to put a Bitcoin symbol in there somewhere. I mean, remember, most of this has nothing to do with aviation safety, or people that fly in any way. It all has to do with VC funding. So anything you do has to be focused, laser sharp at the VC funding, and then running away before it burnt all the money out. That's what
I like to call it distributed systems. It sounds more funky when you call it distributed systems. Whereas if you call it blockchain, everyone's like, oh, this is rubbish.
Yeah, fair enough. You're right.
Distributed systems, and people are like, oh, this sounds really technical. I think you can change the language to suit the needs of the outcome, I guess. I think honestly, I'm not joking here. I think there is a place for it there in the mix there somewhere. I think you need to apply the right technology. So I think things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you're talking about 2 transactions per second, well, you're not going to really service the needs of manned aviation on 2 data packets a second. So it needs to be fast, it needs to be secure, it needs to ensure that you're maintaining consensus between all the different UTMs and electronic conspicuity providers. But I think, I don't rule it out yet, Gary. Don't rule it out.
If I'm very honest, I don't understand Bitcoin. So I don't understand any of that.
In that case, Gary, would you like to buy one of my Bitcoins?
It was a beer bottle lid.
Oh, damn. I thought you said you didn't understand this stuff.
No, but I understand beer bottles. that's for sure. Lee Davies is mentioning, I posted that on SES News, the manufacturers group coming together. Too little, too late. A lot of this is too little, too late. It's been rubber stamped and done. The stuff in America, the stuff in Europe is done, and luckily James is reading it through and for us to say what's happening. And stuff in America, it's going to be. I don't know. Where are we at? Comments? Are we marching towards 20,000?
Well, I don't know how many there are, but the whole thing. The only one battle we've got is non-compliance. It's the only weapon left in the arsenal is non-compliance. Rules are totally ineffective if people don't follow them.
Well, look what the authority did with the. If you rushed out and Rowie, you can pick that one up. Bruce, you've read that stronger than me.
Yeah. The CA, like in the UK, everyone had to register by end of November or whatever it was. Then we had the noisy bikes. Then we had it was extended till the end of January or something for BMFA members, and now CAA have extended that until the middle of the year when the EASA rules kick in. So I think what CAA is saying is, we bit off more than we can chew. We can't handle the workload because people have actually registered. Oh my goodness, we can't get their ID numbers out in time. So we're just going to say you won't need an ID number if you're a member of the listed organisations until EASA rules kick in later in the year. So all those people that registered, more fool you. You didn't have to if you're a member of BMFA or the Large Model Association or FPV UK. You didn't have to register because you've still got a free pass until the middle of the year. I told you not to register. You weren't listening.
Yeah. But Bruce, you then have to pay like 60 quid to go and join them clubs instead of £9 for the registration. So
yeah, but a lot of the members did register. When they rejoined, they said, yes, send my details to CAA, register me. They could have said, I'm rejoining, but I don't want you to register me, which is what I recommended that they did.
Right, yeah. No, if you're already a member of those clubs, then there's no point in registering. But if you're not, then yeah, I think not. I saw this post on Facebook, and everyone was like saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have registered. You shouldn't have registered." I'm kind of like, £9. Come on, like you spend on.
It's not the money. It's not the money. Now they got the hooks into you. It's the thin end of a wedge, and you've just had that inserted in a very private place. So you should have avoided that at all costs, because now it only requires a little push to get further in. You see, if you get that wedge out, you'd have the protection of your undies still in place.
You obviously haven't been to a pub in London, you haven't been to a pub in London, have you, Bruce? You'll pay £9 for a pint in London. So yeah,
it's not the money. I don't care if it costs
it isn't about money, and it's not going to be £9 eventually, is it? Because there are already 60 to 70,000 people under the number they need to keep it at that price. So unless there's a massive uptick in numbers, it's going to double.
It has to be, actually, that price was discounted from the actual price. Remember, it was only £16.90 or something. So they discounted it. So it's actually, if it's half the number, they'll have to go up to like 60 quid or something like that, 40 quid to actually meet the requirements of funding the service going forward.
I think the thing that I don't understand is why you have to renew every year. If you go and get a passport, it renews every 10 years. Driving license is, I think, 10 or 15, isn't it? And it's kind of like, well, why do you need to renew your drone registration thing every year?
The revenues from the registration are used to pay for the ongoing costs of the service. So that the costs are always there every year. So you've got to get the revenue every year, which means you've got to renew it every year.
But then, how
10 years for driving license.
How much does it cost for a driving license to renew a driving license? Was it like 30 quid or something? I don't actually know. I'm guessing now, but I don't think it's that expensive. And you kind of think, okay, well, if you can do the driving license for a few quid a year, then surely you can do the drone registration database for a few quid a year as well. But maybe it's scale. Maybe it's
economies of scale. Yeah. Because those Raspberry Pis, they cost the same whether you're running 1,000 people on them or 1 million people on them. It's the same cost for that Raspberry Pi and the bedside table.
I didn't realise UK driving licences only lasted 10 years. Thanks, James. I'm about to renew mine next year. I just had a look.
Yeah, mine only lasts 6 months.
Driving illegally for the last 10 years.
My licence only lasts 6 months, and I get so many points it stops working.
That's right. Oh, I thought points always meant prizes. I didn't realise it didn't work like that. Oh, blast!
And I had lots of tickets, but they wouldn't let me into the police dance.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you mentioned Raspberry Pis, and that's in the world of I'll swing back to electronic conspicuity, if I may, and flight aware was mentioned and stuff like that.
Pilotware.
Pilotware is fantastic. Pilotware is fantastic, and that chap I spoke to him recently on other matters. Really smart guy and coming from the right place, and that's why the UK's got a bit of a lead, really, in all of that. Not a bit, actually, a huge lead. But what I was going to say was ADSB and the infrastructure paid for in America by the FAA, millions and millions of dollars spent on putting masts up with fairly good, but not amazeballs receivers, and that system to pump it into proper air traffic world has cost an absolute fortune. And when ADSB was envisioned in the 1990s, people really didn't think software-defined radios and a Raspberry Pi was going to come along, whereby you could then have 100 And this is partly why Pilot Aware works well. You could have 100, actually 1,000 users in the UK with receivers pumping information into privately owned service. There's a service in the UK called 360 Radar, and the CAA will tell you its coverage is better than the official coverage. But those millions of dollars, not quite the same. They didn't quite spend the same amount in the UK, but in America, the millions of dollars that they've got to spend recouping or get back on that investment in 30-year-old kit, it's got to be paid for, and it's all part of the problem. Oh, hello, EASA appreciation has got something to share. Let's have a look at this. Oh, your turn.
So this is a screenshot of Pilot Aware's coverage. So they've got, I think they've got about 60 or 70% coverage across the UK now. So they've got these base stations, but they're now spreading across Europe as well. So they've got a few in Germany. They've got them in the Netherlands. But they're able to pick up FLARM, ADSB, Mode C, Mode S, and Pilot Aware, electronic conspicuity. And I won't say any more than that. And I've now just broken the world with.
You've broken the world.
Yeah. What they do. I've got an SDR with a FLARM receiver on my workshop, and it's connected to the net for Open Glider Network.
And that's exactly where they're getting their data for the gliders. The FLARM and OGN is because that's coming from OGN. The MLAT, the Mode S and ADSB is coming from 360 Radar. And they say they've got more than 1,000 contributors, and don't get me wrong here, James. It's because England is a nation of train spotters, and nowhere else has it been picked up. No other country in the world has there been such enthusiasm for watching things with numbers go by, and that's why it's so successful. But it is because they can. I'm ranting a bit, but 360 Radar, you can track aircraft it used to be out of Lynham, but out of wherever they are, Bryce now, I guess. The military low-level stuff, big cargo aircraft, all the way around their low-level routes, below 500 feet, all the way around Wales, all through the valleys, all through the Mac Loop, just extraordinary.
Do they have aviation anoraks?
Oh, they have full aviation hazmat suits, I think.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Garrett. I used to be in the when I was at university many years ago now, but Loughborough Flying Club and Loughborough Gliding Club, and you got some very interesting characters in there who used to do some bizarre things. You know, they would sit there and reenact a flight using a flight simulator, and they would be sitting in chairs, and people would go up and like serve them food while they were on the flight. And stuff like some of the stuff that happened was
yes,
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about I suppose eccentric aviators. Is probably the best way to put it. So, but it's great. It's great that we've got sort of pretty much a world leading infrastructure there already. So, when you look at sort of the next steps for digitizing our aviation picture, we're probably in one of the best positions sort of globally for doing that, I think. So
I don't disagree with you. And I don't disagree with the idea of a digital modernized sky either. I don't disagree with that at all. Quite how you handle pilot data and things like that, but it's a pity that Ian isn't here, because as he would have said, we've been talking about this DJI proposal for more than a year, because the EASA stuff came onto the table, and it's been there. It's been said it was open. This is no shock. This is no surprise. It's been there, and DJI is the only company. It's a bit like shooting the messenger. EASA said we'd like to do it like this. They said, all right, we can do it like this. That's it. There it is, and everyone's going, oh no, the sky's falling in. In this one case, for sure, it's not DJI's fault. That's what was asked for. Hi there, Mick. How you doing? It's what EASA asked for, and they've complied, and they've shown the world what it might look like. Again, people need to pay attention a little bit more, then it won't be as shocking for them. And on that note, All right, what are we going to rant about next? Parachutes. Did we all see? I'll put it in at the top. Let's see if I can paste it in here again. Did everyone see? Yeah, here you go. Did everyone see this truly splendid video of a review of a parachute system? Some Canadians. Hope to get them on. They might come on next week. And it failed every single time. Quite extraordinary. And I don't know. What do we think about parachutes and multi-rotors and or fixed-wing aircraft?
Even if it failed, there should be a link in the description if you want to buy one, eh?
Well, funny enough, Steve, so that video that came up and their candid review of a system which consistently failed, but that is a system that is required to fly over people, to get permission to fly over people in the state.
Well, see, you've misunderstood the purpose. It's not a parachute, it's a shroud to cover the bodies.
Oh yeah, you're
It's
right.
quite ironic when you install a safety system to an aircraft and it actually makes it less safe.
Yeah.
It ends up deploying like during flight and ends up getting tangled in rotors or something, and then falls down to the earth and like hits someone. If it's got a 0% success rate, that would kind of say to me that actually it is less safe by having it on board. I don't know the details of the testing that they did on it, so I don't want to lie.
I watched the video. It's very, very convincing, and I was amazed that you needed another controller to fire the parachute. So you've got your DJI controller. In this case, it was on a Mavic. You fly. Oh dear, there's a problem. There's an issue. Let me just put down this transmitter whilst I pick up this other transmitter and fire the parachute.
They don't even have an accelerometer to measure a sudden G change, like if it had gone into a tumble or something. It's not even automated. You've actually got to count to 10 and pull the ripcord, basically.
Exactly. That's right, yeah. And it did take me down a little of a rabbit hole of finding other parachute tests with RPAS. I've only ever flown fixed-wing aircraft at RPAS that have parachutes, and they have pretty much frightened me every time for two reasons. Reason number A, made huge bumps out into the airflow, like drag, horrible, very inefficient. And then the chum who'd set it up only had me there on the sticks for the last bit if the parachute failed, because then you were taken over within 10 meters of the ground with the thing going like snot. To just stuff it in the ground in a more elegant manner than if you did nothing at all. But it's but
it's like the Mavic Mini. If you fly it without the prop guards, it's sub 250, so it's safe. If you put the prop guards on, suddenly it becomes dangerous because it's 258 grams or something. So, I mean, really, seriously, this is kind of counterintuitive to me. The prop guards actually make it safer, don't they? But no, you have to register it if you put the prop guards on. So people will fly it in its unguarded fashion, which doesn't require registration.
Oh, will they? Will they really? Drone Droid saying his parachute requires 500 feet to open at the minimum. Is that a manned one or is that on your RPAS? Because you're going to go a long way.
You want those ones that open on it?
What I think happened with that is that they basically, DJI were like developing for the sub 250 category for like the A1 category or C0 aircraft. And then the CAA then or the EASA then came out with, okay, we're going to have a transitional category below 500 grams. And they're like, oh, bugger this. Well, we can't get it below 250 grams with like prop guards on, so we'll just accept that it'll be slightly over now because you've now got the 500 gram transitional. So I think the transitional will come into effect, but I think what'll be really interesting to see if if DJI do release something that meets the open categories, because you've got the transitional, which is basically just sub 500 grams anything. Or you've got sub 2 kilos, anything. But the thing is, the sub 2 kilo is basically useless because it's 50 meters horizontally from people, which basically means you can fly it in the middle of a field, and that's about it. And then but the sub 500 gram is interesting because you can fly it basically as close as you want to people, as long as it's deemed to be safe. So that's basically shaving their eyebrows. And then you can't fly it over the head. So we're coming back to this whole problem that we had back in the old days of the PFCO, where they said you can't fly directly overhead, and you're kind of like, well, can you define what directly overhead is? Is it like 10 centimeters, like a meter, 10 meters, like, actually directly overhead? If you've got a wind speed, a wind speed of 10 meters per second, actually directly overhead might be like a safe place to actually be hovering, because the wind is going to blow it off course anyway. So the whole directly overhead thing has already been proven to be,
No, you don't think like a bureaucrat. A bureaucrat would say directly overhead is in a position such that if there was to be a failure of the craft, the person below would be struck.
Well, at Farnborough in 2010, when I flew there, the Israelis had this thing with a parachute, and once it landed right next to the bloke on the ground control station. Very, very, very impressive. But every other time, it disappeared off across the runway, being dragged along by the wind with people chasing it. So that's always been my...
Sounds like it needed a parachute to me.
Yes. You introduce... I think with the trouble with the parachute is you introduce uncertainty in where it's actually going to land once you trigger it. So if you want to be more certain, then you trigger it as low as you dare, in order that takes up the slack in that regard. But I've seen, drone droid said 500 feet in this joke. It was a manned one, but I have seen people deploying parachutes up in the gods, and I have watched things float off for miles and miles and miles, and that's just as dangerous as not being.
Well, imagine if it got hooked in a thermal and drifted up into controlled airspace, and an airliner hit it and it brought the airliner down. That's not a safety feature.
No, it's okay. Be a plastic bag.
I think the problem is that like these bureaucrats in wherever they are in EASA.
Brussels.
I don't even know where is it. Brussels? Is it EASA Brussels? I don't
Isn't everything bureaucratic in Brussels?
Wherever EASA are, like somewhere in the depths of Mordor, basically, they're coming up with all this regulation. They're trying to be clever. They're trying to be like, okay, well, if the wind speed's this and the aircraft weighs this and you're flying at a height of this, then the kinetic energy is going to be this, and then so you can't do that, you can't do this, and it's kind of like, they try and break it down to such an incremental level that basically it becomes impossible to navigate it. And really they need one law. Like the one law should be to do what you like. If you hurt someone and you're an idiot, you're going to end up in jail.
That sounds a bit like British law.
That's my law, and that's the one they use in Canada for sub 250. You must not endanger personal property. That's pretty straightforward. And if you do hurt someone or break something, you've obviously broken that rule, so they can throw the book at you. But it's not prescriptive, because people sitting behind a desk in Brussels or wherever, they cannot write prescriptive regulation, A, for something they've never done themselves, and B, for a situation where they're not even there. And there may be many other variables that affect the outcome. The only person who's qualified to judge whether something is safe or not is the person on the ground with the transmitter in his hand making the decision.
Well, that's flipping back to this idea that the police in the UK, with their increased powers, will be able to take over and land an aircraft.
But that's all right, because the police know what they're doing. I trust them.
Just playing devil's advocate with my own law. Basically, I think the reason why they haven't gone down that route is what they're trying to do is to remove pilot competency from the equation. They realize that, to go and move the drone industry forwards, I think we need to build a level of autonomy into this. And to do that, you need to be able to remove the pilot skill from the equation. So they need to define what's safe and what's not safe to do that. So I think this does have a factor in that. So, if you're going to go down that route to say, okay, well, the person with the transmitter in their hand is the only person who can judge that, the sort of counter argument to that is, well, what if you haven't got a person with a transmitter in the hand and actually it's a computer flying it and this guy sat behind a desk looking at a screen watching drones go by? How do the engineers which design these aircraft design them and design the operation in a way that is deemed to be safe? So I think this is what it's trying to overcome, rather than actually overcoming the manual flying safety aspects.
Yeah, but if you're going to say the pilot may not be competent, then why are you bothering to have exams and tests? Because you're trying to prove the pilot's competent. Once you give him that, accredit him with that competence, then all the decisions can be left up to him, because you have put him through the ringer. You know he's competent. So why would you challenge his competence? You've proven it exists.
I remembered I had a parachute. Look, I've got a parachute. I was in the box down there. That was for a flying wing.
Yes, Mary
So
Poppins.
I'm ready. I'm ready to comply with something or other.
Have you tested it yet?
No. And with this one, this one went into a 2-meter carbon fiber flying wing, which was really hard to actually launch. And I never knew I would never hit the button, because I'd never know if I'd packed it right. So it's just easier to land.
What is it they say? If at first you don't succeed, parachuting is not the sport for you.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't have done a lot. It was a tiny parachute for a flipping heavy, great big thing. That wouldn't have done. It would have marked where the bits were quite nicely. I think that's probably what it would have done. But other than that, what else I know what I wanted to talk about, and you somehow there was a lead into it, but I've forgotten what it was. Did we see the flight test somewhere linked into it? Manned multi-rotor looping and rolling today.
No, I saw the thumbnail. That was enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I saw the thumbnail and I wasn't going to watch the video, because I just thought, yeah, there we are, another man multi-rotor, whatever's. And then I saw another thumbnail and Josh Bixler was stood in it. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So actually, and I'll admit, all I did was forward to the bit where he was talking. I didn't watch any of the flying. But what it made me think is, already I'm thinking, oh, ho-hum, another one, right, whatever, on to the next. It's already getting a bit boring. But what it also did make me think was, I wonder what rules, because I think it was in Germany. I could be wrong on that. But I wonder what rules it's flying under, because I don't think it's quite the same in Europe and the UK as it is in America, where they let you can be in a manned thing that you've made by yourself under a given weight and do whatever you like. I think it would have fallen under ARPA's regulations. I don't know. What do you think, James?
But that Swiss guy that did his own multi-rotor with the electric motor. First of all, he had petrol motors, and then he converted it to electric, and it had all of the Kevlar strings. I mean, he was flying assumably under EASA. He was in Switzerland or somewhere, and but he was in ground effect most of the time.
Sweden, I think, wasn't he? Well, he was in. Huh? He was in the Scandinavian.
Yeah, it was one of those. Isn't that part of Europe? Isn't Sweden? I don't know how Europe works. How big is it? No.
Europe. It's like.
It's near Scunthorpe, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
got smaller recently. I know that.
How much did this drone weigh? Do you know?
I don't know. Quite honestly, I don't know.
What was it called?
I think everywhere people are saying things like what manned drone loops and rolls or something like that. But there we are. World's first manned drone shown pulling loops. It was not.
Okay, yeah, I've got it.
It's not the first thing, and I'll put the link in the comments for everybody else. It's not
a 12-rotor manned drone. A coaxial multi-rotor has been filmed in Croatia pulling extreme rolls and loops.
It's not the first, because Peter Schreipel did one, and that Swedish guy did it. It's hype from the media.
It's not the first by quite a dramatic amount, is it? And the ones that are down by you, going to start the taxi service soon. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. But what is the weight limit we'd have to worry about, James?
So I think the main one is 150 kilos. So once you get above that, then certification is pretty much a guarantee that you need to do it. Let me bring up. I've got a lovely diagram. I know we love diagrams on.
Yeah.
Let me show you a beautiful diagram, and then you can get excited by it. But basically, 150 kilos. Once you're above that, then you have to be in the certified category. But anything below 150. Usually, well, it depends. Sometimes it's specific, sometimes it can be certified. It depends on the complexity of the operation. So It's not all about, you know, at the end of the day, whether it's specific or certified category is more about risk. Weight has one contributing factor,
is it
but
the
it's not.
aircraft? Is it the aircraft weight itself, or the maximum all-up takeoff weight?
Maximum takeoff weight is what they're generally going for nowadays. But let me show
So
you.
people like Gary wouldn't qualify even without a plane.
Yes, well, sadly true.
Let me share this. There we go. Should be able to see that now.
I'm going to look at my which email, Louis? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. How can I can't do some? Oh, hang on. He asked for appreciation.
So this is the graph, and so this is your kind of open. Yes. What's going to be the open category? Then you've got the specific in the middle here, and then you've got your certified category. And obviously, as the level of complexity goes up, I'm not like. I don't know how they came up with these lines. Like, there's obviously some thinking.
That's a good one, isn't it? Yeah.
But I would love to understand how they came up with this wiggly line and what that's all about. But
so we think that means dangerous to start with, getting safer as it gets slightly bigger, or we've been using it longer. What's that level of complexity? Oh,
yeah, level of complexity. There was another one. I don't know. I'm trying to find out where. There was another one.
Hang on, just come back up against that other one. I recognise that one. Keep coming up. Keep coming up. There was a red one with Here it is. That's pizza ovens.
Pizza.
Yeah, that's definitely. What's that doing in there? Ovens. Yeah.
But they do talk about mass, I think, and here somewhere. Oh no, this is talking about the requirements, but yeah, complexity and all the rest of it. So increased mass. This is generally like the high complexity or high mass. In the specific category, you could, you know, it's not just about mass. It's about mass, and you know, if you're operating, say, a 120 kilo drone over a congested area beyond visual line of sight, you're probably looking at a certified category, even though it's below 150. But all you know is, as soon as you go above 150, then you do get into the certified category. But I think there are certain situations where you can operate it under like experimental aircraft and things like this. There's all of these other laws which come into effect for, you know, building aircraft, but certainly if you would be carrying passengers or anything like that, it would definitely be certified. When you're building it and testing it, then I think there's other rules which come into play, like experimental aircraft and all the rest of it. And basically, if you're willing to put yourself in the seat, then the CAO are like, okay, well, unless you're suicidal, you're probably not going to want to kill yourself. So they kind of give you a little bit more respect if you're willing to put your own, you know, yourself in the seat. But if you're
skin in the game, no, that's a myth. Skin in the game. Don't listen to that. I don't believe it for a minute.
Skin in the game.
So yeah,
but it's you know, well, it's walking the tightrope, isn't it, between manned and unmanned? So they were flying it in an unmanned sense, doing the loops and rolls, and then somebody got and sat in it for a low hover. So yeah, it would have been flying in one set of rules in one circumstance, another set of rules in another circumstance, I would have thought.
Yeah, so actually, thinking about it, I think the actual cutoff is 100 above 150. You basically treat it as a manned aircraft. I think that's the difference. Is it's more about between 20 and 150. It depends on whether you're certified or specific. Once you're above 150, then you come into the realms of manned aircraft. I think that, from what I remember now, that's the distinction. So, yeah, basically, you're no longer a small UAS. You're an aircraft as much as any other aircraft is. So, yeah, I don't know what that rolling and pitching and all the rest of it, aircraft, this manned drone is, but it looks interesting anyway. It looks like it was a lot cheaper than some of the other designs I've seen out there. So yeah, I think worked out there's over 100 different air taxi designs now out there in the world, and yeah, none of them can actually like do any air taxiing yet. So yeah, I
That's
think
what we're
it's
talking about. That's what we're talking about, Louis. Louis saying the DCL flight test. As if flight tests have just released it. I haven't seen that one. It must have just happened before we came on air. But I will look at that video. Maybe if you could post a link in here, Louis, I'd appreciate that. There'll be 101 manned drone. I think why shouldn't we? We should design one. Surely we can all work this out and have a.
I'll fire up my copy of Blender right now.
Yeah, exactly. Blender, use a cigarette. If you can't design it on a back of a cigarette packet or a beer mat.
3D renderings are essential, though. The quality of your 3D rendering determines how much VC you get.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, and we'll just subtly put Bitcoin symbols in there. Yeah. Well, Vertiport Africa's here. I'm still mowing the grass and stuff and getting other things ready. I could tell you my woe of water, but I won't.
So what we really need to do, Gary, is we need to go and design an IoT connected air taxi, which is powered by Bitcoin, and then literally we will get like $1 trillion worth of funding. I think that's the key. And it's also AI powered as well. It's got to be AI as well.
You've got to have some AI. Yeah,
some AI.
So. I think the burble is dying down about flying cars again for the next 20 years until it burbles back up again in another form. I found one. Somebody did talk absolute nonsense on LinkedIn, and I found a Nord. I think it was a 401 or 201, 400 or 200 or something like that from 1967, and it looks exactly like some of the things that have been out. And there was a similar. There was I think it was 4 or 6 passengers and 2 pilot version proposed, and that died in 1971.
Hella had a flying car designed back in the very late 50s, I think. And of course, we've got our friend Mr. Moller, who's been right at the cutting edge of flying car stuff for years. I think he doesn't get any credit anymore, which is kind of unfortunate because he spent all those other people's money to make that little flying car, and no one even remembers him now.
Yes,
yeah, very much. But they,
and de Havilland in Canada, remember they had that flying saucer, which really would qualify as a flying car with the. It's nothing new, nothing.
That went quite far, didn't it? That thing. They did quite a lot of research with that.
Spent a fortune on it, yeah. And of course, if you're thinking of a flying bus, there's a hell of a platform because you had to stand on that. It's like on the bus when you got to stand and hold the pole because there's no seats left.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see the Ferry Rotodyne also came back in some guys.
The media are certainly short of ideas at the moment, aren't they?
Well, somebody was posting about this modern idea of an autogyro. Look, we could do it like this, and I think myself or someone else said, "Oh, you mean like a tiny Ferry Rotodyne?" And that failed for the same reason as Google's had problems in Australia. It was noisy as a noisy thing. That's why that wasn't successful. It was a great.
I saw something very interesting. Someone pointed out that Amazon, with all their delivery drones, they're going to have cameras on them. Are they going to become part of a police surveillance network like they have with their Ring doorbell thing? Will their drones do the same thing, but with aerial surveillance? And if people are worried now about young fellows spying in their bedroom windows with these toy drones, what's going to happen when the skies are full of Amazon drones tracking everybody every moment of the day?
Well, yeah, I mean, they did that. That's part of their pattern. One of their patterns, isn't it, is for the gathering of aerial data from their delivery drones, which just seems like mad. Cloud Spritz is saying he attended in a study and sponsored by the FAA in the Atlanta area over a 30-mile trip. It saved 8 to 10 minutes, weather depending. That I don't doubt that for a second. I do not doubt that for a second. And don't we think we should all be living in a much better way where we don't need to go in and out of the city and things like that? Ireland is spending a fortune upgrading its rural internet infrastructure with that in mind, that it'll reduce journeys because people will be able to work at home or things like that.
I wrote a blog entry today on teleworking and why we're not using it more.
Yeah. What? And what did you? Well, maybe you can put a link to your blog in this. Or what did you conclude then?
That people are stupid.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, that's basically bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's fine. If that's.
I include myself in that.
But I find that argument a little bit worrying because you could end every single blog post with that. People are stupid. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And did you see that the couple who got on the cruise liner and got the wine delivered by drone, they admitted it was just a prank. We knew that. We said it was.
We did call that
it.
last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for them. I mean, look at the international media coverage they garnered. It was all over the papers here. People here in South Africa saying, "Have you seen this? They delivered wine, you know." That got everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So fair play to them. Pity they didn't have some sort of branded product that they were trying to push. That would have been.
I think
perfect.
they pushed their wine club, didn't they? They're a member of a wine club. Perhaps they got a bit of free promo out of it.
They did. Maybe they get a few more free cases.
Well, the other thing I noticed too, I've been saying there's a no risk assessments, and all these bureaucrats are pulling rules out of their backsides. It's proven again today, because South Korea have just announced drone registration will be required for any drone weighing more than 2 kilos. So why have they said 2 kilos? And everyone else, some others are saying in Japan it's 200 grams, in the USA it's 250 grams. If there had been a proper risk assessment done, then everyone would be doing the same thing, because the risk doesn't change just because you're in this country or that country. And I think this is absolute lunacy. We shouldn't allow this kind of rubbish to go ahead, where the people making the rules don't even follow their own rules and don't even do the very first basic step, which is the risk assessment.
Yeah, I know. So, James, is there any other than EASA news? Is there any ARPAS news that we should know about?
I'm trying to think now. No, but actually, we're going to be. There's a CPD event coming up for RICS. So RICS have got their annual CPD event in March. March the 26th, I think it is. But yeah, basically they're going to be. We've been invited to go and present there to talk all things drones to these wonderful surveyors. So I think we're starting to see very much drones being used as a tool, which I think everyone talks about that. Yeah, 26th of March in Newmarket, Rowley Mile Conference Centre. So if we've got any drone surveying enthusiasts who are also RICS members, then you can head down to the CPD event, and I'll be talking there on the 26th of March. But yeah, I think we're almost coming out of that chasm, and I regret to say that I watched one of say that he's a good guy, but Mr. MPW, our ninja friend. But yeah, he's doing. He was talking about how we're kind of in the chasm at the moment within the drone industry, which I kind of agree with somewhat. But I think we're actually coming out of it now, and we're starting to see this sort of rather than the early adopters, we're starting to see this sort of first wave of real adopters coming through. You're starting to see these big construction companies getting serious, the big surveying companies getting serious. So yeah, I think we're kind of reaching that sort of part of that growth stage of the S curve. And what that will mean for the individual one-man band operators, I think there'll still be a place for them, and I think they'll still maintain what they're doing currently. But then I think the equipment suppliers will do very well. Probably consultants will do all right, and training providers will do well as well. So I think really it's about integrating drones as a tool into existing industries. That's where the real growth is at the moment. And then
I agree.
And then Future Flight will hopefully enable wave 2 of the drone industry, which will be the BVLOS stuff. And then so we'll start seeing the early adopters coming in for BVLOS applications, and see the cycle repeating. So I think we're sort of starting to see that the point of where the drone industry will start becoming a bit more mature now. So I think it's it's a positive thing for the industry. We've had some negativity for the last sort of couple of years around Gatwick and Heathrow and God knows what else. So hopefully the next sort of 12 to 24 months will be a upward trend rather than a downward or flat trend. So we'll see what happens.
It was Spain last week, wasn't it? I think. And saying Klaus was saying about Brendan saying that the committee, the 255 gram, that was, and Spartan mentioning risk assessments, that was a Danish number. They came up with that number to start with. The first time I've seen it written was the Danish came up with that. And then I think the only other really, what's that one you always quote, Bruce? There was that George Mason University.
Yeah, the George Mason University. Yeah, that's the study they did.
Yeah,
and I just this 250 gram thing with EASA with the maximum takeoff weight. It shows you how silly these bureaucrats are, because that I can understand why that applies to a manned aircraft, because you don't want too many people getting on board. It's like an elevator, the rope will break, it'll fall to the ground. But with an unmanned aircraft, like a toy drone, there should be the mass of the craft itself, because if you have a drone that can lift, maybe it weighs 250 grams, but it could possibly just take off with another 500 grams on it. That means you can't fly it. But I mean, who would fly something with 500 grams of weight? And what does it constitute? Does it constitute actually being able to fly, being able to lift off the ground and remain in ground effect? And because manned aircraft are certified for a maximum all-up takeoff weight, who certifies an unmanned aircraft as to what its maximum all-up takeoff weight is? If you've got yourself a Mavic Mini, how do they know what is the MCTO? What is the MTOW on that, and who certifies it to that weight or that maximum takeoff weight?
So I think this is like, okay, I don't know where this definition of maximum takeoff mass has come from, but maximum takeoff mass has always been what the manufacturer set that to be. So if you buy a DJI Mavic Mini, for example, it will tell you on the website what the maximum takeoff mass will be. It doesn't mean that you can then load it up with an extra 400 grams and it'll just about get off the ground with that. I don't think that's what they mean by maximum takeoff mass. Now, if you did buy an aircraft which had a particular maximum takeoff mass, I think you could redefine that as being, say you bought, I don't know, a DJI M600, which has got a maximum takeoff mass of, say, 16 kilos. But you said, okay, I'm only going to use up to a 2 kilo payload, which would bring it up to like 11 or 12 kilos. If you set the maximum takeoff mass as 12 kilos, then it means that you can't fly it above 12 kilos. So I'm not too sure where this definition has come from as to maximum takeoff mass being as high as you can load it with it still being able to fly, because that's not my understanding of what MTOM is. Yeah,
there's this thing that, as you say, manned aircraft is certified by the manufacturer, but I haven't seen anyone certifying the MTOW for a Mavic Mini. I haven't seen DJI specifying it. So what's the legal status? What is the MTOW for a Mavic Mini?
Well, the MTOM is whatever's in your operations manual, isn't it?
So you could say maximum 249 grams, and then you can fly it without registration.
Yeah, you can do that with your manned aircraft. And people, I know before CAP 722 came out, there was a big hoo-ha about getting, and that's the big regs basically in the UK, big hoo-ha about, because it used to be the original run was excluding weight of fuel. So people used to measure stuff without the batteries because that's the fuel, but that quickly got changed. But you can with the manned aircraft. People take the doors off, they get them under whatever, then they put everything back on again. To get them, they take doors off and things to get them weighed, to get them into different categories, and put like a thimble of fuel in the things, so the engine will start but not run for long. But
all you need to do, Gary, is you need to discharge the batteries, and you'll shake yourself.
Oh yeah. Wasn't it shake them? Wasn't it shake?
Electrons are lighter than air, though.
What was it that we had to tell people to do? I can't remember. Wasn't it shake the batteries or something like that? Make them go longer. Shake them. Something like that. Where was I going? I was going, oh yeah. So your problem comes. So you can do all those things. But your problem comes when you have the slight accident or incident where your insurer turns up and he puts it back on the scales, and then suddenly he's not paying out. Or then the CAA say, well, you're in the next category. This is the accident you had. So yeah, you can put whatever you like in your manual, but just don't have it checked. That's...
See, what you have to do is, if you do crash it really, really well.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, if most of it turns into dust, then it's difficult to weigh dust. That's not an official line from myself.
It's difficult to weigh dust. I see the T-shirt. I see that on a T-shirt. That is a fantastic T-shirt, and quite right. So yeah,
how much does a bloody smear weigh anyway?
but the weights we're arguing about are right down the bottom, aren't they? Just to stay below.
Yeah, I'm just thinking from the registration point of view. You don't want to have to register under the ERC regulations. You need to have a craft that has a maximum takeoff weight of under 250 grams. And then you can argue about the camera later if you don't have an SD card in it. When they take you to court, you can say, no, it's not a data collection device, it's a data relay device.
I did see some stuff about that, but I can't remember what it was now. No, we've gone over the hour. Does anyone else have anything else? Go on, James.
So with regards to camera, is it only if it collects data, not if it relays data?
Yeah, and it's only if you're using it in a place where you can collect personal data. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no people, you can have all the cameras you like, because there's no way to collect personal data, and it says personal data.
It sounds like a very long-winded,
arguments are won or lost on points of law, and that's it. It's a technicality, but technicalities count. That's how people get off murder charges, because for whatever reason, the law is not justice. Don't confuse the law with justice. The law is about the letter of the law.
Of course. Otherwise, parking tickets wouldn't exist. But that's a whole nother debate. But just get registered. It's so much if it was like.
Do you feel a pressure? Do you feel any pressure? Can you feel a slight pressure increasing incrementally? Is it getting harder to sit?
It is a tricky one. It's a very tricky one.
Because with this remote ID and everything coming in, would you tolerate if the government said, okay, we're going to put a transponder in your car, it's going to track you everywhere you go, so we know exactly where you are or your vehicle is at any time of the day or night. We know if you've been speeding, we know if you've been in areas you're not supposed to go or down one-way streets the wrong way, and we'll be sending you out tickets and so forth. And that information will be kept online for 6 months, and it'll be available to all these individual private companies that will be doing the tracking with their wonderful securities. We know how that works. Would you accept that as being, that's fine because whatever?
Well, to be fair, apart from the tracking piece, most of that actually exists already. So you obviously have to register with the government, and third-party companies can buy your data and then send you fines in the post and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that sort of stuff already exists for driving. I think in terms of tracking, I kind of agree. I don't think they should be able to track you wherever you go. They should only be able to track you if you're doing something wrong. So this is the thing with the whole remote ID thing, is should anyone be able to remotely identify you, and even if it's just a serial number, should they be able to get that kind of information? Should they, if you turn on your phone, should you be able to say, oh look, there's a drone over there? And I think that's the key problem, is actually...
If you turn on your phone, I can see your IMEI number with my Raspberry Pi and your SDR. So to a certain extent, we're already at that.
It is interesting though. What if you had to pay an annual fee to drive your car to the companies that monitored your transponders? If you couldn't drive until you paid your £30 a year fee to monitor your tracking, and if you didn't pay that, you couldn't drive, and you had to get go on your phone with an app to get clearance to get in your car and start the motor before you could drive anywhere.
Are you talking about the US regulation right now?
Yeah, the US regulations. And if you drove into an area where there was no cell phone coverage, you could only drive another 400 feet, and then you'd have to stop.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with the US stuff at the moment. There is a need to monetize the industry in some way, because we're not going to see BV loss without some kind of monetization. My difference is that there's a lot of companies out there at the moment who want to monetize airspace, and I'm kind of completely against that. I hate the idea of monetizing airspace. What I'm more interested in is the idea of monetizing data, because data has to be collected by people. People have to install sensors. They have to be able to power those sensors. They have, there is a cost and an effort involved in collecting data. And so why shouldn't someone who installs a device that collects data be able to monetize that? That seems like a...
Well, Google collects a lot of data, but I don't have to pay Google any money. They pay me money because my data is what they're getting and it's worth something to them. So they pay me. So why don't these UASs pay the people flying the drones for giving them the data they're going to be using?
But a lot of online services, I think, they provide a service in return. So something like Facebook, for example, you provide them with your data, but then you get a service in return for free. So
what services what service are these UAS going to be giving recreational flyers? I don't need a UAS at the moment. What service are they going to give me that's going to make me do something I can't already do?
No, so I don't think recreational flyers would, unless they want data from someone, why would they buy data from people? If you don't need...
Why would they need to use a service like that? Because they're not getting anything back in return they don't already have. Basically, what's happening is the regulators are saying, we're going to take this privilege away, we're going to sell it back to you. That's what they do. That's how they make money.
Yeah, no,
I
completely agree. Like, unless you need data, unless there's a reason why you need data, then why should you pay for it? So if you're recreationally flying, then from that perspective, unless the regulators come in and they say, okay, well, for safety reasons, you have to do these things, and there is a good justified reason why you should have to do that.
And here's the risk assessment to back it up.
So I think the key point here is really that, where the monetization should come in is for the BB loss flyers. That's the key. That's the driver for myself.
So you're saying that they should incur some fees for the airspace usage or clearance or clearing of the sky around. No,
not even that. If you're flying beyond visual line of sight, then you're relying on a set of sensors to be able to tell you where other aircraft are. And they may be ground-based sensors, they may be radar, it might be electronic conspicuity ground stations, it might be a whole range of different things, weather forecasts, maps, things like this. If you're going to be flying autonomously beyond visual line of sight, you're going to be requiring all sorts of data for that. And who's going to provide that data to you? Well, data providers.
I don't know anyone that currently flies beyond visual line of sight who requires all that data. They just fly beyond visual line of sight, stay below 400 feet, stay clear of airports and helipads. And so what are they going to be giving us again for this money?
Yeah, it's. I think. Well, the easy thing, as you know, James, is no GA below 2K and get all those airliners up and out the way as well, and just clear the sky for RPAS. They don't need any of this nonsense.
I'll take you down to my local gliding club, and you can try and convince them of that. No. I'll carve out exceptions for gliders because I like gliding as well. But no. Recreational airspace users won't have an issue with balloons, gliders, paragliders, all that sort of thing. They won't have a huge issue with staying out of the way. It's a lot of what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of general aviation stuff milling around that could get up and out of the way, and it's frankly dangerous. There's a guy in a Cherokee now, I kid you not, he goes past below my house once or twice a week now. That sort of behaviour's got to be stopped.
Well, funny you should mention that, but you've seen recently I've been putting some videos up of the jet rally that was held last weekend at the airfield here. Now, they had the airfield closed, white crosses, no TAMD, a week in advance, and on Saturday morning, no less than 5 aircraft announced their intention to join the circuit and land at the closed airfield, and had to be warned off by radio saying, no, it's closed. Look at the white crosses. Did you not read your NOTAMs? So we're all being told, oh, this BV loss, it's these drone people, they need all this stuff. Well, hang on a minute. Why would the drone operators listen if the manned aviation community are just saying, oh, NOTAMs, we don't need those. Oh, white crosses, that's just a decoration, isn't it? I mean, seriously, the ball needs to fall, skin in the game. Well, if you've got skin in the game, you need to be the people that are following the rules, not the people flying the toys on the ground below.
Yeah. It's a thorny issue. I'm with James. Modern digital sky. I completely get that.
I think if you're flying visual line of sight as a drone or model aircraft, then it's your responsibility to avoid other things. So I don't think you need to pay. You can do that recreationally. That's fine. Not a problem. Not a problem from my perspective. If you're flying a manned aircraft, then you're flying something that's pretty dangerous. And I think you need to make yourself conspicuous. I think that's a fair enough request. If you've got enough money to go and buy yourself an aircraft or a share in an aircraft, you can afford 250 quid to fit an electronic conspicuity device to your aircraft. If it's going to help save your life at the same time, exactly, something like that.
$35. That's farm.
The fact that they don't do that shows that skin in the game is not a valid argument.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think mandating it on manned aircraft is a wise thing, not only for other airspace users, but for the people who are flying the aircraft in the first place. I know people have lost their lives through flying because they've had mid-air collisions. My old gliding instructor unfortunately isn't with us anymore because he died in a mid-air collision. So I know people personally who've passed away from this. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's generally a good thing that manned aircraft have electronic conspicuity fitted. But if you're an Amazon or a UPS or a company like this and you want to do long range delivery, then I think drones, because they're automated and they haven't got a man on board, then they should be responsible for avoiding other aircraft. That should be where the responsibility lies. And how a manned aircraft is meant to avoid a drone, well, you can't see it until it's hit you. So it's almost
you can 2 miles if you're an airline pilot. They all need to get those special optics, mate. Are you saying they're telling lies?
I wouldn't dream.
I agree, and I think it was yourself that coined the term that these are digital aircraft, and it is a mere work of trivia for us. If aircraft are fitted with FLARM or with ADS-B, it is trivial for us to get out of the way, and in the drone community, it is trivial. So it's getting manned aviation complying. That's what we need.
And this is the thing that I think is really going to hammer us. The pilots in the USA, the GA pilots, they don't realize that for this broadcast remote ID to work, they're going to have something that picks it up in their aircraft. And that's going to cost them money. It has to be certified. It's not a case of, once the drone's got remote ID, we can fly around because we can pick it up. What are you going to pick it up with? It's not going to be ADS-B, so your ADS-B doesn't pick it up. You're going to have a new piece of electronics in your plane that will pick up the drone. So remote ID, broadcast-wise, is pretty much useless at the current point in time, even if it was fully implemented, because there's no receivers for it in aircraft.
Well, I'll let you into a secret now, Bruce and Gary, that so I'm involved in Future Flight, and basically we have a roadmap fully planned out for routine BVLOS operations in unsegregated open airspace, and the roadmap is about 2 to 3 years time is when we are planning to demonstrate this without temporary danger areas in open airspace, unsegregated, all the rest of it.
Do you mean that this is where manned aircraft can come down below 400 feet quite legally?
This could be 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet.
I fly. It has been rumoured that I've flown beyond visual line of sight FPV, but when I do it, I'm still flying below the tops of the trees. Now, is that somehow dangerous that I'm flying a model aircraft, or rumoured to fly a model aircraft below the trees 1.5 kilometres away? Is that not a relatively safe operation that requires, why would I require all sorts of extra paraphernalia to do that?
Well, if you went to the CAA and you applied for an operational safety case, you can currently get permission to do that. So
why would I do that? It costs them, they charge $380 an hour to evaluate your proposals here. I'm not going to pay that sort of money. No one's going to pay that sort of money.
So yeah, the shielded approach to BVLOS is currently an acceptable mitigation. So as long as you're flying within small distances to objects. So if you're flying over an airfield, maybe not. But if you're flying over what I would define as cluttered ground, so where there are lots of objects where an aircraft couldn't land, then I think there is a clear mitigation there in place to enable beyond visual line of sight. And this has been demonstrated in America already. So people have been doing beyond visual line of sight inspection of power lines and things like this, because their mitigation is that they fly close to the power lines. And if a helicopter is that close to the power lines, it's got more problems than the drone. That's the key point. So, I think that's legal. but you know, like it could be legal to drive down the road without a driving license, doing 50 mile an hour in a 50 mile an hour zone. If you still don't have a driving license, you're still going to get prosecuted. So you know, it's it'd be great if we lived in a world where we didn't have to apply for permission and all the rest of it, but unfortunately there are idiots out there who do stupid things, and one of the ways that we try and get around that is to basically say, look, you have to have a license, you have to get permission to do stuff, and unfortunately it's the idiots who ruin it for the rest of us. So that is the fact of life. So we, if you want to do stuff, I think the CA are generally pretty good. I've never really had a problem with them. They're usually, like, touch wood, they're usually sort of fairly common sense. There are certain things you have to debate with them. Certain things you can disagree with them on, but they're open to accepting logical arguments in most cases. So yeah, generally I think I've had a positive experience with them. I think the problem comes is when you go and get big media stories come out in newspapers and then politicians get involved. That's generally when the big problems come, because then they put pressure.
Transport.
They put pressure on the civil service to go and do something about it, to go and save their face, and then some kind of crazy new laws come out without too much forethought.
It's a pyramid of stupidity.
This is what happened after Gatwick. They had a whole roadmap of bringing out this regulation regarding FRZs, and then Gatwick happened. They're like, oh crap, we've got to do something about this now. And they brought out the regulation in a rush. They probably would have extended it out a few more months and probably done a bit more consultation, spoke to a few more people, made sure it was right before it went out. But I think they had to reduce that pipeline down to go and meet the requirements of politicians, and that's what caused some of the issues we saw. But we are seeing some improvements there, actually. Actually, that's one thing I can speak about, Gary. I'll let you two talk while I find it. But I did a little bit of analysis. Regarding FRZs. So if you're interested, show you.
You don't go out much, do you, James?
I've got graphs and everything. It is amazing. It is actually amazing. Yes.
Does it come with a PowerPoint presentation? I saw this PowerPoint presentation the other day. I couldn't believe how many words somebody managed to put on a slide. I could not read a jot of it. There's bullet points, words, little images, everything. I'd blow it if I could read it. What's I going to say?
Let me share my screen quickly.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Right. Are you sitting comfortably, Bruce?
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Hang on. Let me add it to this. There we are. In Excel.
Okay. Here we go. This is the current league table for FRZ aerodromes. So these are all on 5. So these basically have got all positive responses so far, and then we get to the bad
on 5. What are we talking about? What do you mean on what are you talking about?
Okay, so basically we put out a call for people to respond to a questionnaire asking for responses on what their experiences were like operating at specific aerodromes. And basically we asked people to rate, based on your experience, giving it a number from 1 to 5, where 1 is terrible and 5 is amazing. What was your experience of requesting permission to fly within the within the FRZ?
St. Athan?
Sorry?
St. Athan? Does anyone? Bloody hell! Right down the bottom.
Yeah, well, they are also in alphabetical order, so it's joined 34th out of all of these 6 airports here. So, but bearing in mind that some of the, all of these have only got 1 response. So, what we're hoping is that over a bit of time, once we get, once people see the league table, if they say, oh, well, actually, no, I went and flew at Fair Oaks, for example, and actually I had a really good response, you'll start seeing these sort of move around a bit. But it's it's a start, and we're hoping that will encourage aerodromes to start sort of competing to basically get the best, to move up the leaderboard. But if I look at, I'm just careful, I'm not going to like break GDPR here, but if we look at some of the data here, it was quite interesting because if you look at the rejections, basically there's nothing there which is useful at all. But distance from aerodromes, again, like in terms of the numbers, there wasn't really any correlation. But one thing which was interesting which is probably quite obvious, is if you apply for your FRZ permission 2 days before or within 2 days of the day you're going to fly, then there is a 2 to 3 times more chance that you're going to get rejected. So get your FRZ permission in early. And when I say that, some people are saying that they put it in super early and they still got loads of rejections. But generally, if you are in up to 2 days, you're very much more likely to go and get a rejection. Another interesting one, actually. So this was the difference between NATS aerodromes and non-NATS aerodromes, and these were the number of rejections. And actually, NATS aerodromes were getting more rejections than the non-NATS aerodromes. So that was another interesting one. So
isn't that a function of busyness? Wouldn't the NATS ones tend to be the bigger airfields?
So yes, in general, they would be the bigger airfields. So I'm not explaining here why that exists. It just that is the data. This is percentage. So it's saying that I think it's like 75% of permission of people who applied to fly in NATS aerodrome obtained their permission, and 25% of them were rejected for some reason. And then but for other aerodromes, it was around about 18% were rejected rather than 25%. So yeah, draw from that what you wish. I'm not going to try.
I can let you into a little secret. Many years ago, when I was about 20, and I wielded the ban hammer at an airfield on the end of a phone. If someone was a complete knob on the phone, I just used to say no. It was quite easy. I rejected quite a few airspace requests based on what a knob, and then sometimes when people were not quite sure what they were doing, or but very kind and or very polite, and then you helped them through and explained how they would do what they did, and gladly gave them permission. There will be. You've got to remember there will be people like me sat at the end of the phones quite a lot of the time. So that's a warning in itself.
Yeah. So I think there isn't. Unfortunately, we couldn't capture whether the person requesting the permission was a pinnacle. Yes. But I think you have seen some improvements though. Like Battersea, it used to be £180 to go and get your permission in Battersea, but they've now reduced it to 30. But it is still the only aerodrome which is charging a fee.
Oh wow!
So it's the only aerodrome out there which is charging a fee to apply for an FLZ. But having said that, like that, that doesn't seem that unreasonable. If you're having to ring someone up and you're having to negotiate, permission to fly within their aerodrome, and they're having to organise. At the end of the day, those people who you're calling are being paid a salary, so someone has to pay for it.
Sure.
So I think it's fair that drone operators do have to pay a fee. The level of that fee, I think, is we could have a debate about that. But at the moment, essentially, drone flyers are being subsidised by the landing fees from general aviation at the moment. So is that fair? Well, I don't think in the long term that's going to.
I wonder how many people have got their PPLs and CPLs this year compared to the 50, 60 odd thousand have paid £9. I wonder if those 50 or 60,000 people have very, very close to raising the same amount of money as all the PPLs and CPLs that have been issued. I wonder.
Yeah, but that money goes to the CIA, not to the specific aerodromes, does it?
Oh yeah.
So I, you know, at the end of the day, Barton, you know, that's cost them money to give that one operator permission to fly within their aerodrome. You know, so who's paying?
Again, they don't own the airspace, and they're making money out of aircraft landing at their airfield, going through an airspace that's owned by the people, man. It's owned by everyone, man.
It is, but we're getting into legalities now. But they're responsible for ensuring that that safety is maintained by air users within that space. So, you know, if they're responsible for doing that, that's you know, if you've got a problem with that, that's something you have to go to the regulator about. But these aerodromes, you know, at the end of the day have been, you know, told that, or not told, but they've basically taken on that responsibility to ensure that aircraft are safely separated within that area. So,
sure,
you know, at the end of the day, that's a regulatory requirement. So, if you don't agree with the regulatory requirement, then take that up with the regulator. But at the end of the day, these people have to pay staff to go and issue these permissions. So I think £30 is, you know, I wouldn't.
Well, yes, compared to 180, yes.
Yeah, I think that seems sensible. You know, for 10-15 minutes of someone's time, that seems like a reasonable fee. 180 seems excessive, but I'm just surprised that they're still the only ones who are doing it.
Some of the girls I know charge much more than that.
I'm a professional, just like your mother was. Yes, yeah, it's. So,
but we'll be releasing this. We'll be publishing this soon. So, Gary, if you want to put out a post on SUS News, you know,
absolutely, of course we will. Of course,
I'll let you know once we've got something out.
It would be interesting to mix that in with General Aviation's experience of it as well, and find out which the most truculent airfields are. It would be interesting.
But you can see why Battersea might want to start charging, because out of all of the aerodromes here, they've had 8 requests, which is more than double the next highest. The next highest is 3 requests versus 8. So they're clearly got a lot of requests. You know, being in central London, there's people doing a lot of roof surveys and all the rest of it in London. And if you're within, 5 kilometres of Battersea, which basically covers most of central London, then you need
a hoon of an area, isn't it? It's a hoon of an area. Oh, a lot of people in that area, yeah.
So, you know, I can imagine, like, for the first few, they're like, okay, well, let's do it. And then they kind of got to a point, they're like, okay, we've had 3 this week. We need to start, you know, we can't keep doing this, you know, for free. So the fact that they're so busy, kind of, maybe that explains why they've started charging first. But I kind of think that you'll start seeing some of the others, you know, following suit eventually. I think that, unfortunately, will be the case. But you know, General Aviation, they pay landing fees. You know, if you're flying with an FRZ, then surely you should have to pay some kind of flying fees. I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
Bruce probably had gone. Bruce, tell me why I'm wrong.
Oh, no particular reason. You're just wrong.
Yeah.
Why do we pay taxes, eh? We pay taxes for this sort of thing, not for these fees.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? It is a tricky one, very tricky one.
I'm going to start a new product line: drone seats. Drone seats where if you've got a drone, you sit in it and it's shaped like this. So I'm a drone flyer. Look at my seat. See?
Yeah, there you go.
I'll send you one for free, James.
And
I completely didn't get that joke. So I'll
that's just as well. That's good. That's just as well. Yeah, we've gone well over time, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Unless there's any other pressing news that we've seen, James, thank you very much as ever for bothering to read the copious amounts of paperwork. I actually want to know the number of pages now. I can't. Staggering if it's more than 500 pages, and that staggering. And yeah.
Well, I was actually planning to print them all off for the next when we go to the Joint Industry Action Group next. I was planning to print off all of the EASA regulation and then basically just say that this is the difference between the new regulations and the old regulations. And then I basically did some rough sums and realised it was going to cost me about 40 or 50 quid in paper and ink. I was like, no, I think I'll just explain it with words. I think it's probably just as effective.
Yeah, no, amazing. And Bruce, thank you. What videos have we got coming up this week?
More stuff from the JET meeting, and I've got a few reviews which have been in the queue for a while that'll be coming out, and yeah, so business as usual.
We shall look out for those that are next JET and RC model reviews. For those of you that don't know, but if you don't know that, then you wouldn't be here. You just wouldn't be here. You must know that. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very much, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again, 2100 GMT next week, and we'll see who we can rattle up as a guest. Cheers all. Take care. Bye-bye.